Well, I'll tell you where the snowflake came from. So
Okay.
in seventh grade, I was in we had moved to Germany. My dad was in the army. We were in this junior high school, and I came into the school in like November or something. So I was kind of an outsider. And our
Yeah.
English teacher wanted to teach us just how to write a paragraph, right? Just write one good paragraph. If you can do that, you can write more. So um, we all took a stab at it. I submitted a paragraph, and it came back from her, and she says, "No, this is not right. You're not doing it right." So I tried
Mm.
again, and that also wasn't doing it right. And finally, she says, "Look, what you want to do is have 5 sentences in your paragraph. First sentence is an introduction that says what you're going to say. Then you have 3 sentences that kind of support that. And then you have one sentence that sort of wraps it up. So you say what you're going to say, then you say it, and then you say what you said." Okay.
Right.
And so I wrote a paragraph like that. And she gave me an A for it, but it kind of stuck in my head that, okay, there is a structure to how things, you don't just sort of write whatever you want. There needs to be
Right.
a structure, a presentation to it. So that really stuck with me. And all through high school and college, when I had to write papers, I sort of worked that way. Well, what am I going to say? Okay, work that out first. And so I found it very easy to write um, papers in college when I had to write papers, because I just sort of fleshed it out like that. So when I was getting ready to write my PhD thesis, all my fellow grad students in physics were going, "Man, this is such a labor to write." And I just sat down. I had this new idea that came to me, and I says, "Let me just work on that." So I just wrote a page on, here's what I'm going to do, and then I tried it, and things worked out nicely. And honestly, in a month or so, I had the first draft of my PhD thesis written. And talking to other people, I think that that's a rare experience. But what I realize is there's a methodology here. It's divide and conquer. You figure out at the high level what you're going to do. You break it down into bits. You break each of those down into bits and further until you've got the whole thing written. So when I decided that I was going to write a novel, right? To me, it just seemed obvious that this is the way to do it. You start with, okay, here's what the story's about. Then you flesh it out. Then you expand it some more, and you just keep expanding until you've got things written. And to me, it seemed obvious, because it was by that time now ingrained after 20 or so years of since seventh grade. That's how I had been writing everything. And so I just thought, this is the only way you can write a novel. And so I got kind of evangelistic about it when I was telling people, this is the right way. Any other way does not work for you. And
Yeah.
quickly people smacked me in the face, metaphorically, and says, "No, there's other ways. You're pretty arrogant. You're quite a jerk here about this." And I finally learned to sort of tone it down, pull back, and say, "You know what, this works for me. If it works
Right.
for you, great, you know, run with it. If it doesn't work for
Yeah.
you, use it as a learning experience for something that does not work for you, and just go with that." And so that has really flown well with people, because by my estimate, about a third of all people really, really, really resonate and can use the snowflake method exactly. And there's some
Right.
people who are just, who really prefer the seat of the pants method, and they run screaming when they hear snowflake. And then there's some people who want more structure. They want to outline it in very, very great detail. Uh, but I think that everyone, because of the way that I wrote the snowflake book, it talks a lot about story structure and what you're trying to
Right.
achieve, how character arcs and things like that, and the 3-act structure of a novel, and how scenes are structured and things. So that is useful to anyone, whether or not they are a pantser or a outliner
Right.
or a snowflake or what. So I had a wonderful time writing that snowflake book, because I just says, yeah, I'm just going to have fun here. And every chapter of it is going to it is going to illustrate the point that the chapter is making.
Right.
So
It's a very meta in that
yeah,
sense.
yeah, it's very
It's
meta. Yeah,
yeah, it's
talk about the first disaster. The big bad wolf comes in and shoots baby bear with a gun.
Right.
Disaster.
Right.
That is the first disaster of the novel. So
Right.
yeah, it's extremely meta.
Yeah, it's, almost recursive in
Yeah,
its, you know, if
yeah.
and that's
Well,
a
and
side
that's
tangent.
what fractals are. They're self-similar. They're
Eh
self-describing, and that's
right,
what yeah, that's what we mean by meta. Is it's recursive.
r
It
right.
refers to itself.
W One thing that I really appreciate about how you that something that you go into early on in the book and then early on in the Snowflake Method structure is to understand who you're writing for before you get knee deep into the story. Is there an audience for this? Is there determine
Mhm.
who you will be selling this book to, and immediately when you start talking like that, that turns off a certain percentage of the writer population who, um, you know, want to hold to uh, the 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 art of it, that would, the art and commerce. Well, that's all well and good, but if you're going to write a book and you hope to have anyone read it, you're going to need to market that book to them, and marketing could be a dirty word, but it's just the fact that if you want other people to hold your book in their hand, you
Mhm.
need to figure out how to get it to them. And the first thing when determining how to get your book to them is it a book that they would like to read? And that's something that you go into early on in the process, because why waste 6 months of your life writing something that no one is going to buy?
Mhm.
So you talk early on about finding that sweet spot of writing a story that not only you love as the writer and that you're
Mhm.
going to want to spend a chunk of your life immersed in, but that other people will too. When did that start coalescing for you? And did you realize that needed to be thought of early in the process?
I didn't really understand that early on. I thought that, yeah, I'm writing a book that everyone's gonna wanna read, and eventually I realized that's not smart, and so actually my first few novels were about different things, and they appeal to different sorts of people.
Right.
But, there came a point in my life where one of my friends says, "Hey, you could probably do well teaching people how to write fiction. You could probably make some money off of that Snowflake thing." And so at that point, I says, "Okay." And I had learned enough about marketing and target audiences and stuff that I
Mhm.
actually sat down and asked myself, "Okay, if I do something on this, who is the target audience?" It is people who want to write a novel. It's not people who wanna write nonfiction, it's not people who wanna write poetry or a screenplay, it's people who
Right.
want to write a novel. And so, when I created my website, advancedfictionwriting.com, I geared it completely to one thing, very narrow niche target audience. One person in 1,000 in this country wants to write a novel. That's it. One in 1,000. I don't try to appeal at all to the other 999. And so if you go to my advancedfictionwriting.com, right at the top it says, "Are you dreaming of writing a novel someday?" Right? Okay, 999 people are going to look at that and go, "No, I'm not. I'm out of here." I want them out of
Right.
here immediately, right? But the one in a
Sure.
thousand who says, "Yes, I am," I want them to go, "Wow, this is a website just for me. This guy made a website exactly for what I want." And then, of course, I have
Right.
you can sign up for my blog. I used to have an advanced fiction writing easing, which was the solution, to that problem. So here's the
Mhm.
problem. Here's the solution. When you're writing a novel, you need to know what problem you're solving. Your reader your reader has a specific problem. They want to be entertained, but there's a limited number of ways that they can be entertained. A person who wants a romance novel doesn't want guns, right? They don't want zombies. They want a romance novel, right? Maybe they want a cowboy if it's a cowboy romance novel. Maybe they want a mountain man if it's a mountain man romance novel. Now, someone who wants fantasy, okay, they want wizards, They want orcs and, the romance, don't talk to me about the romance. If that comes in, fine. They want, Harry Potter, or they want, Gandalf or something. And so you need to understand in general terms what it is that your reader wants, and then you just need to focus on giving them just that and nothing more. No more, but no less. Once a writer understands that, they realize, this is not about, this boring stuff with demographics. And I absolutely never think about the demographics of who is my target audience. So
Right.
when I get marketing, I used to get marketing stuff from my publishers saying, tell us about your target audience. What's their age? What's their gender? What's their economic background? And I'm thinking, these people know nothing about marketing. Why would they ask me such a stupid question? It's not demographics, it's psychographics. What is the psychological need, the emotive need that your reader wants? Okay, I write historical novels. My reader wants to go back and live in a world which is no longer accessible. You can't go there anymore, but I can take you there in my fiction. And I can take you there better than any other novelist on the planet. Okay, that's the goal that every single novelist should have if they're writing historical fiction or fantasy fiction. I can take you to that world you want to go to, and nobody does it better than me for that exact world. Okay, that's what real marketing is. So then if you go to my personal website, you will see the world, you'll see graphics for the world which I take my people to. And my promise, I will take you on an adventure to this place. And people who don't want to go to that place, they're out of there immediately. But the 1 in 1,000 person who does want to go to that place says, I have never seen a website anywhere that promises to take me to this place that I wish that I could go to. So that's what marketing is. And that's, I think, if every novelist thought about, what is the one world that I can put my reader in that nobody else can do, then, we would stop stressing about marketing.